On this edition of the Iowa Business Report,
really almost anything you can do that's not filling out tax forms is a better use of that time.
if Congress does not act this year, income taxes will go up. A new study tells us by how much. Voting is now open for your favorite manufactured product. And in our business profile, you'll hear about a relatively new group focusing on helping grow Iowa travel and tourism. This is the Iowa Business Report for the first weekend of May 2025.
The Iowa Business Report is a copyrighted production of Totally Iowa Media, which is solely responsible for its content. For more, click on the radio programs button at totallyiowa.com. Here is Jeff Stein.
The 2017 Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act included a sunset provision. Namely, the measures in the law would expire on December 31, 2025. That means unless Congress acts, income tax law will automatically revert to what it was before the 2017 changes. And that means our income taxes will go up. Joseph Bishop Henchman is Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation, which just released a report indicating the impact of congressional inaction on this topic.
So at the end of this year, this law, which was passed in 2017 in the first Trump administration, is going to expire unless Congress acts. If they don't act, starting January 1, 2026, about 80% of Americans will see a tax increase. And it'll come in a lot of different ways. The child tax credit will fall. That amount will be reduced. The standard deduction that 90% of taxpayers take, this is everybody who doesn't itemize, that will fall in half. And so about $10,000 more in income will be subject to income tax. We'll have higher federal tax brackets. The small business exemption will go away. Investment benefits for new business equipment will go away, and so on and so on. And all told, it'll be about $2,000 increase per taxpayer.
And that's if nothing is done. And
Yeah.
One of the things that I find interesting about this is many of us itemized our deductions on our federal tax returns. The idea was to simplify the process, and so the standard deduction was increased greatly as part of this act. And so many of us have gotten out of the habit of itemizing, retaining receipts and retaining records, etc. So if you reduce the standard deduction, and I'm not as a taxpayer prepared for it, that's a rude awakening, isn't it? Because they really, as you noted, increased the standard deduction so that 90% of us would avail ourselves of that opportunity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in addition to my work here at National Taxpayers Union, I also help some people with their tax returns every spring. People still show up with shoeboxes filled with letters they've gotten in the mail and all their receipts and everything. And it's usually a pleasant surprise, I get to say, actually, we don't need to go through all that because given your income and where you're at, you can just take the standard deduction and we can get you out of here fast rather than you having to go through everything. And, for people that do TurboTax or have accountants, it's the same type of situation where you don't have to go paper by paper, line by line, and fill out this form and this other form and this other form and add it all up. Some people still do itemize, but now it's about 10% of Americans instead of about a third of Americans, what it used to be. And we actually found that saves, when you add it all up, about 2 billion hours a year that people are spending, working more on their small business or just enjoying free time. Really, almost anything you can do that's not filling out tax forms is a better use of that time. That simplification could go away if we don't act. So if this tax bill just expires and it goes away, taxes will go up by about $500 billion a year nationwide. But on top of that, you'll also have the compliance burden because some of these simplification reforms will go away. So maybe another 1 billion or 2 billion hours that people will have to spend doing their taxes in addition to that. And then on top of that, you have the state level reform. And I love talking about taxes in Iowa. I don't know if people love hearing about taxes in Iowa, but I love talking about taxes in Iowa because you've had it both ways. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Iowa had a really complicated state tax system too. And I'm not saying it's easy now, but it's a lot simpler than it used to be because in a lot of cases, Iowa just piggybacks on the federal definitions, on the federal rules, on the federal tax code in ways that it didn't used to. It used to be that kind of there was an Iowa way of finding income rather than just taking the federal way. And you'd have to deduct your federal taxes from your state taxes while you're deducting your state taxes from your federal taxes. So things have gotten a lot simpler for, like I said, it may not feel like it, but things have gotten a lot simpler for Iowa taxpayers over the last couple of years, and we really want to make sure that doesn't go away.
You talked about taxes going up by $500 billion annually. What does that do, though, to business and the economy broadly in terms of purchasing power, real purchasing power with wages, GDP, et cetera? There must be some impact.
Yeah, it's not good. It'll reduce our GDP, our gross domestic product, that's our measure of the economy, by about 1.1% over 10 years, which doesn't sound like a lot, but anybody that knows anything about compound interest, if you go from 3% growth to 2% growth every year, year after year after year after year, it leaves you a lot poorer at the end of the day after a decade or two. Wages will go down by 0.5%. And people really do notice that. I would say even more than they notice prices going up, they notice wage changes. And it'll cascade across the whole economy. Some areas will have greater impacts than others. The investment tax exemption that would go away would mean that we're now taxing businesses more when they invest in new equipment and new business inventory and purchases. There's a lot of debate over tax policy, but that seems to be an area where people agree that we ought to not overly tax that. And that was a big reform that was done in 2017, that it would be nice to not go away. We've done some focus grouping and polling, and a lot of people are concerned about the impact to their bottom line. The child tax credit is something that comes up a lot. This bill doubled it. If it goes away, that goes away too, as well as the benefits to small businesses, which were considerable in the bill as well. Small businesses create a lot of new jobs, and we will certainly feel the impact of that.
But if this sunsets, we lose a benefit in the state of Iowa as well.
Yeah, and we run the numbers. It's about $2,063 for your average Iowa taxpayer. That will go up, and that's in the federal side. On the state side, there are ways that Iowa automatically follows the federal tax code. So those will flow through automatically January 1st if Congress doesn't act.
It's a tricky thing time-wise because, as you noted quite accurately, Congress waits until after a deadline. Well, that puts the state in a very difficult legislative position.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate, and Iowa is not alone in facing that. A lot of states meet in the early part of the year, and that's it for the year. I know nobody is going to try for the IRS, but the IRS and state tax agencies, they need to know what the tax law is probably by about February or March, so they can get all the forms out there and get the filing done and be able to allow people to submit stuff. So a delay is not really good for anybody. Congress needs to hear that. I hope people are aware that this is something that is happening, this deadline. This all goes away December 31st unless Congress does something. And there are some things that state policymakers can do after the fact to mitigate the harm, as you mentioned. But it'd be really nice if we didn't have to get there to be in next year and state policymakers having to do that. This is one of those things where, maybe people didn't necessarily feel like they got a tax cut in 2017. But believe me, you'll see the tax increase when it comes. And nobody benefits from that situation. So I certainly hope that they can get it done. If it's not done, or even if it is, there are things that policymakers in Des Moines can do to mitigate the impact, to set up Iowa for success, some of which has already been done. There's been a lot of work done to conform the state, to clean out a lot of the unnecessary deductions and exemptions and use that to lower rates. More of that can be done, especially if Congress doesn't act. Since it's been law for so many years, people may not realize it is this close to going away if something isn't done.
Joseph Bishop Henchman is Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. Check out their state-by-state data at ntu.org. We connected via Zoom on Thursday, May 1. Still to come, cast your vote. And later, introducing Iowa to a traveling world. You're listening to the Iowa Business Report. Have you heard the latest news on Iowa's rural economy? Congressman Randy Feenstra is doing some great work for our rural communities by lowering the cost of credit. He recently introduced a bill called the Access to Credit for Our Rural Economy Act, ACRE for short. It's all about making it easier for Iowa farmers to buy land and for small-town Iowans to purchase a home. With a volatile ag economy, every bit matters. Iowa bankers, and especially their customers across the state, appreciate Congressman Feenstra's work to make interest rates more competitive and drive investment and prosperity. Iowa bankers are committed to supporting farmers, business owners, and rural communities, whether that's providing access to credit, offering financial advice on business and risk management, or making investments in local communities. Rely on your local banker. Please go to iowabankers.com/ACRE to thank Randy for his leadership and Iowa's House members for their support of the ACRE Act. This message was paid for by Iowa Leaders in Education and Advocacy, the voice of Iowa bankers. Welcome back to the Iowa Business Report. I'm Jeff Stein. Last month we told you about the second annual Coolest Thing Made in Iowa contest, sponsored by the Iowa Association of Business and Industry and Midwest One Bank. Nominations were being sought at that point. Now, voting has begun in the competition. This is the popular vote round and is open through next Wednesday, May 7th. The 16 survivors of that round will move on to the first round of head-to-head voting, beginning on Friday, May 9th. My count shows 69 different products listed in the popular round. You can learn about those products and vote at coolestthingia.com. Among the manufacturers represented, Viking Pump, Winnebago, Sukup Manufacturing, Frontier Co-op, Triumph Pharmaceuticals, Ritchie Industries, Rada Cutlery, Fairy Tale Cotton Candy, New Leader Manufacturing, Craig Tool, Maytag Dairy Farms, Kinsey Manufacturing, General Mills, ConAgra, and dozens more. Many of those companies have been profiled on this program in the past, and thanks to this competition, we now have a list of new ones to share with you in the future. The winner of the Coolest Thing Made in Iowa will be announced at the Iowa ABI annual Taking Care of Business Convention in Council Bluffs in June. Coming up, visiting areas large and small. You're listening to the Iowa Business Report.
I'm Iowa Secretary of State Paul Pate, and as the owner of a small business, I know how hard it is to find time for everything. You often spend hours at night or on weekends catching up on paperwork. That's why the Iowa Secretary of State's office developed Fast Track Filing. With Fast Track Filing, you can file documents with our office on your schedule. Fast Track Filing, moving at the speed of business. It's another way that the Iowa Secretary of State's office is working to help business owners spend less time on government paperwork and more time with employees and customers. For more information, go to sos.iowa.gov. That's sos.iowa.gov. This is Iowa Secretary of State Paul Pate reminding you our Business Services Division is here to help your business succeed.
This message provided by the Office of the Iowa Secretary of State. Welcome back to the Iowa Business Report. I'm Jeff Stein. In this week's business profile, we'll reintroduce you to Chelsea LaRude, Executive Director of Iowa Travel Industry Partners, or ITIP. Its basic goal is simple: to bring the world to Iowa for a visit.
The Iowa Travel Industry Partners is Iowa's statewide tourism association, and officially launched July 1 of 2021, so just finishing up year 3 of the association. It is a membership-based organization for any organization within the state of Iowa that plays within Iowa's tourism space. So that is convention and visitors bureaus, chambers of commerce, economic development organizations, museums, attractions, lodging properties, as well as county supervisor partners and other affiliate associations such as Iowa Lodging, Iowa Restaurant, Iowa Hotel and Gaming Association. Those partners all play an important piece of the puzzle as well. Planning for this association started back in 2015. Iowa's tourism industry associations used to be very siloed and segmented. Nobody really collaborated with each other. Everybody was kind of in their tunnel vision. And so the dream for the industry starting in 2015 was to create kind of an umbrella organization. Finally, as with any good strategic plan, it sat on the shelf for a while. So back in 2017, then it came off the shelf and work started on it, bringing in a third-party facilitator to lead the industry through discussions on kind of what they wanted out of this organization. And that finally led us to July 1 of 2021, getting the association finally off the ground. COVID did play a piece in it with really kicking us in gear, saying, we need this organization now more than ever. ITIP doesn't really focus on marketing to the general leisure traveler. Our job is to support the tourism organizations in the work that they're doing to attract visitors.
Having an integrated approach helps because if you're trying to attract someone from, let's say, some distance, as opposed to within the state of Iowa, they may hear of one place but think it's not worth making the trip to just that single site. But if you can have some sort of organization that suggests other places where they can string together multiple stops, that just enhances the whole experience and the chance that the traveler will come.
Absolutely. The traveler doesn't care about the imaginary city lines, county lines, none of that. They just want a great experience. So if we can encourage that collaboration across the tourism entities all across the state, the visitors are going to have a better experience.
We don't have some of the traditional destination points that a warm weather climate might, for example. So what are some of the challenges in getting the word out that we have some wonderful places to visit within the boundaries of the state of Iowa?
Iowa doesn't necessarily combat a negative perception. We're combating no perception. Specifically, ITIP focuses in the kind of the business tourism space. So recruiting group tours to the state. So our motor coaches, meetings and conventions, and sporting events. And with those, we're just trying to get Iowa on the map and in their radar. We're just not even in their mindset because we don't have some of those traditional places. We're not talked about all the time in national media. We always say we just got to get them here for the first time, and then they love it and they keep coming back. So our goal is just to get them here that first time.
This is a much easier sell once you get their attention. But how do you get their attention?
Really, it's a lot of conversations, figuring out what are their guests, what are their attendees, what do they enjoy. We have amazing history and culture and food. You can eat around the world in local restaurants and never step your foot in a chain. Really honing in on what are their interests, and we can usually find a destination or something that fits what they're looking for.
How easy in practice has it been to get everyone, in essence, rowing in the same direction when they were so used to taking care of their own little corner of the world?
Change is hard. Comfort is a trap. So we're still working on that. We're still working on that educational piece, getting the full industry aware that we're here and we're a resource. And so we attend different statewide tourism events to help make sure our name is out there and that they know that we're here as a resource for them. Our association currently has over 130 member organizations right now all across the state. So we continue growing every month, every year, and looking forward to building those new collaborations.
Do we find that economic challenges have an adverse impact? Normally, you would say people travel with discretionary dollars. But I've heard others say that in a post-COVID environment, people are more willing to go and make the trip regardless of their immediate economic situation because of having to stay locked down for so long.
Iowa is in a positive place because of our cost of living. We're a somewhat more affordable destination to travel to. We're a drive-to destination, so they have lower costs that way, as well as abundant outdoor recreation opportunities. So they can have a pretty low-cost trip to come to Iowa.
So if we were to look ahead, say, 5 years, what would you like to see ITIP be in terms of its place in the conversation or in terms of whether you measure by growth across the state in terms of tourism, et cetera?
I would say in 5 years, my dream is for ITIP to be the trusted resource for all tourism organizations around the state, as well as for all elected officials. Anybody that has a question that revolves around the tourism space, my goal is for ITIP to be that first phone call, that first point of inquiry to answer their questions. Really, ITIP kind of operates on 5 key pillars: development, resources, education, advocacy, and marketing. And all of the programs that we offer are intended to be a resource for our members. We know so many entities across the state are small teams, small resources. They can't do it all. So we're trying to help fill those gaps for them. ITIP is a private nonprofit membership-based association. We have a 501c6 for the association, as well as a 501c3 foundation arm. We are separate from the state Iowa Tourism Office. We work in partnership with them, but 2 separate entities. Earlier, you asked what are some of the challenges that we have to overcome, and some of that is the perception that we're an organization just for the large convention and visitors bureaus, and that's not the case. Really, our primary target is the rural partner that's out there trying to do this, that's got, one person on their staff that's part-time doing the tourism world. We're trying to provide resources for them to be successful in the work that they're doing.
Chelsea LaRude, Executive Director of ITIP, Iowa Travel Industry Partners. More online at iowatravelindustry.org. We connected via Zoom on Monday, July 15 of last year. And that brings us to the close of this week's program. We're back again next week at this same time. In the meantime, you can listen to all or part of today's program by going to totallyiowa.com and clicking on the radio programs link. We're also found on all the major podcast distributors, 19 now in all. Support for the Iowa Business Report comes from the Iowa Business Council, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization working to elevate Iowa's economy through leadership, research, and advocacy. Learn more and review the group's annual competitive dashboard report by going to iowabusinesscouncil.org. We welcome your comments. Send them by email to radio@totallyiowa.com. I'm Jeff Stein. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a prosperous week.
The Iowa Business Report is a copyrighted production of Totally Iowa Media, which is solely responsible for its content. For more, click on the radio programs button at totallyiowa.com.